Welcome back, everyone. 皆さん、お帰りなさい。今日は222日目です。It is day 222. Today would be a low volume day, right? Yeah, I think these guys are coming up. So then we have like the really low volume day. What's our low volume day for tomorrow? Oh, actually not that low. We have a different unit coming up. Anyways, I guess today is a low volume. 63 sounds like exactly these 63. Oh no, it's 54. Huh. So we got some juicy 9 items. Some 9 items thrown in there somewhere. It's kind of hitting a lull period. We're kind of normalizing a little from our 5-6 days, right? 5-6 days from our Otakon. Alright, let's get into it. It's gonna be too long today. Okie dokie. Okay. Okay. Uh.
立派
Ipa. Right. Oops. I immediately typed Chinese. Oh, wait. I thought we burned this one. Wait. Hold up. No, I don't think we did. Wait, is it? Oh, no, that's food. Oh, this one's rough. We should write something for this. It's something like having too much and then getting sued for it or something. Like, yeah, this one sucks. Wait, is this actually a burn? I guess we have some. I feel like this is a leech. This has got to be one of the leeches, right? Huh. Yeah, I can think. I'm thinking of wheat. I think I'm thinking of wheat. So I don't think this is a burn, but I also don't remember what it is at the moment. Huh. So be, right? Be is the onyomi. And I clearly remember this isn't be. But it could be something. I mean, it could be me. Womp womp. Alright, we're gonna skip this for now. I don't want to think about it. Too soon. Too soon.
岡山県
Wait, is this the same Okayama Ken? Oh, I think this is. Okayama Ken is the second prefecture in Wakotabi, no? Pretty sure it is. I didn't see the... I think there might be one area or maybe a sign that showed the kanji for... And then one of the... I think this is it. Oh, interesting. I'm not sure we got Kagawa Ken. Interesting. What a pleasant surprise. Now we have another form of attachment to this. Neat. Very neat. Okay.
混ぜる
Mazeru. Okay. I'm surprised. I actually hesitated a moment and thought maybe it had a different read. Okay.
Sogo.
Logo.
Seifuku.
If good. What is the Shogun omitting? Put down. Oh.
省く。
Buku. Hmm.
降雪。
Setsu. Okay. What? Oh man, I went for it, and that was not it. Wait. Interesting. Huh. Sunray? Is this a burn? And this is definitely a burn. Oh, I misspelled it.
Nikko.
Nico. Okay, that's fine. I mean, sunlight works, right? Yeah. Okay.
断る。
So what it? Okay.
反省。
Unsaid. Like rejection. Well, actually, this is something else. Consideration? Okay. Ah, it got me again. Dang it. Caused me to pause. Yeah. Oops.
素材。
Was I? Okay, this one was fine now. Okay.
祈る。
祈る。
国際。
国際。Okay. Okay, that was pretty quick. And now the other thing is missing.
条件。
Yolken. Okay. This is like, or is it the other thing? Wait. How do I Yolken this? Okay. Alright. Alright. I gotta sort my... Oh, that's not ka? Looking for the kunyomi. Okay. Alright. That can happen. I typically prioritize onyomi over kunyomi. Largely because that's the expectation. Not that it really matters, you know, like when you read over time, when you read it in a sentence, you'll probably just pick up whichever one. But still.
権利
Handy. Okay.
もらう
Oh. I got a lot of thoughts that are going in the background right now. Because of relating to Wakotabi. I was like keeping up with some community related things or public related things. More on that later in the day. Possibly. There's some interesting discussions being had kind of asynchronously as per the usual life of the internet.
設定する
Eh? Yep.
増える
Ready. Uh-oh.
際
Iwa? That took a little bit.
人権
Inken.
祈願
Kigan. Kigan. Yeah. Hold. Oh, that came pretty quickly.
上
Nice.
がる
That's not too bad. Angaru.
主義
Yugi. Ah! What? Wait. Oh. Yes. Whoops.
事件
You can. Oh, this is it. Yes. Oh. What? Oh, that's a typo.
毛虫
Kemushi. The heck is Kemushi? Oh. Oh, that's not how you spell caterpillar.
相対的
相対的. Okay. Yep. Hmm.
儲ける
Okay.
攻める
Emeru. Emeru. What? What's happening here? I have a block on meaning. Oh, Um.
増税、
増税。増税。Right. Okay.
税金、
税金。
義理、
義理。Wow. That spelling.
毎年、
毎年。Good burn. Good burn.
強制、
強制。That came pretty well. Interesting.
無税、
無税。Okay.
急増、
急増。What?
実際、
実際。実際。ね。Is this like... Yes. Oh no. Real occasion? Reality? Occasion? There are two weak ones. I still think I'm fairly meh. It's definitely this one. And one other. The question is, can I negotiate this with... I don't know what I don't know what it is at the moment. Huh. This is like the actual case, right? So, actually. Okay. I'm still looking for... Yes. Yes. It's fine. Did they go with... Nishi? I don't think they should. Okay. Uh-oh. Say? Oh. That's a little questionable.
検問する、
検問する。
選挙、
選挙。
正義、
正義。What? Just kidding. My gut feeling failed so hard.
叶う、
叶う。叶う。That's okay, Burn. I think words say that stuff is a little bit in the mid section. Fairly mid.
任意、
Had problems with this, right? Oh, this is it. This is optional. And arbitrary. That's one of them. Whoops. What?
条約
typo. 条約. 条約. How does this work? Oh, treaty. That's the other one. Alright, we're ironing them out. Okay, that's too many eyes. In,
増加、
増加。
責任、
責任。Hold up, I gotta get the eye in today. Nice. What incarnation? Oh no, that's just kidding.
定義
Piggy. Oh. Uh-huh. And then that's the other one.
建設、
Kensetsu.
派手
で、
検査
Kensa. Or that's that they're fine. Those two are good to go. Hmm.
制度、
制度。
時制、
時制。Oops. Oops. End of line and come to an end is very honest. Okay, so now we're back here. I like to think this is a leak, right? It's a leech. But I don't quite remember. Oh, you know, this might be the result of a unit move. Well, maybe not. I don't really know. What is this? It's probably a burn. It needs to this standalone stuff needs more connections. I think it's a Kome.
米
Oh, Kome. Yeah, let's write something for posterity. I actually don't know how many things we use for Bei. Oh, we got a lot more coming. I think Kome is the only Kome. Kome. Be. Ooh, this one's interesting. Genmai. Interesting. And then Be. So we have Mae, one Mae, and Kome, only one Kome. So, maybe we'll link it with Genmai. Genmai? Or, Genmai? I don't know. Unpolished rice, huh? Yeah, Kome was something like come to grab your rice or something. Kome. Yeah, come and get it. That was the you have to omit to the bit to obtain get rice, right? Alright. That's fine. Pretty quick today. These are the down days. Alright. I have no idea what tomorrow is. Because... Oh, wait. But these guys are going to come up again. Some of the stuff is going to come up again. Like these 10 and 20s. But I have no idea what the 72 is. Interesting. It's definitely one of these. It's going to take 2 days. It's 2 days to get to a level up. So tomorrow is supposed to be a low volume day, but we have an extra thing. Our low volume days are on weird times. We're kind of like staggered now. Wow, what happened there? It's fun to try to think back to where my digressions are, because there's clearly a digression here. I probably digressed here. I ranted about something. I probably rant about something here as well. Like a one rotation ago, I ranted about something. That's usually what causes this spread. Otherwise, they're within like 3 hour. It would look like more of a bell curve. Or not really. Just kidding. It would look pretty flat. Let's say pretty flat. Unless it's at the end of the hour. And that's perfectly fine though. Whenever this thing... it looked like this, basically. Shoot. Like everything would be lumped together. Huh. I was vigilant then. Alright, let's get into our thing. These are the down days. Down days are pretty good. It's part of the routine, right? The mindset is set for these days. Routine. Okay. To our Mohawk. Mohawk simultaneous next spear number half and blade read. Sorry, every time I think of mnemonics and read and do this type of thing, it was a really fascinating discussion. There was a really fascinating discussion sparked by a review posted on Wagotabi on the Steam page. So, and whenever I'm doing these things, it makes me wonder what propels someone to stake their professional career on trying to voice such a strong opposition. More on that in a bit, but I don't like there's something about being an expert, right? Like maybe I'll do a little bit of a tease, but there's something about an expert. And I am particularly biased when it comes to involving that expert in a field that involves intellectual pursuit. Right. Intellectual pursuit. Now, this isn't something that is about the value of a person or the contribution of a person, but more about the observable behaviors that come from being an expert in a field that involves intellectual pursuit. And one of them that I find incredibly jarring, or maybe I'm very biased, is that when someone who claims to have many years of expertise, which expertise implies that they both have XP and knowledge, right? XP and knowledge in a field that is characterized by the intellectual pursuit, which typically we would say like linguistics. In this, to relate to why this is the case, linguistics and language learning. Now, there are certainly overlaps between the disciplines of language learning, or what I would typically refer to as, in a broader sense, since I'm not a professional or an expert, the idea of learning. Learning is in dramatically interesting. There is overlap between these two disciplines. At the same time, a lot of the criticism and bickering comes from the differences between them, not necessarily the similarities. So, on the one hand, the dialogue between this so-called claimed expert often concedes that they agree on concept of importance, and then use that as a way, concede on concept and use that way to emphasize their gaslighted, that their bias, basically their bias towards a difference. Like, for example, in this case, right, if why this has caused me to think about this interaction. One can come in, like, say, a linguistics person, right? A linguistics person, or language learning, either or. Language learning tends to focus on the output of eventual speech and writing, right? While linguistics also deal with like comprehensive knowledge, like pattern observable mechanics, right? And in both cases, if either of these individuals who are selectively biased drops into my stream now, right here, there's a lot to be critical about, and I understand that, right? Because I'm neither a linguistics expert nor a language learning expert, or whatever that means. And by expertise, it also implies that their behavior and their ideals are very specialized, and I'm not, right? In this case, I'm a generalist at most, if I even can qualify myself as a generalist. And someone would say, well, you could, and this is where the could and should happens really acceptably. It's acceptable when you could and should something. So you should learn these things in context. Go and talk to someone. Go and read native content. Go bring a dictionary when you can, if you need, but pick up 2 or 3 reference books and then go and immerse in native content, right? Or natural content or normal content. You know, the words that gets thrown around all the time are normal, native, natural. And often what I think about is, a lot of times from a generalist perspective, right, a non-expert, this implies top down, because this person is already incredibly specialized. So their emergent level, sorry, I'm being a little bit esoteric today, their emergent level is well above the standard. So their emergent level is that you constantly absorb the whole picture and then use that in order to do the implicit learning, right? So what's normal, native, and natural is, to a person who isn't specialized, unnatural, intimidating, potentially intimidating, incomprehensible, and, lack of a better word, unnatural. Oh no, not unnatural, sorry. Not normal, right? So that is the area of discussion that I'll be talking about maybe like 2 or 3 more days down the road for Wakotabi. But the heated discussion, or not really the heated discussion, it's more like two people asynchronously, or two groups maybe, talking indirectly at each other by stating their case, their specialized case. And what I observe is often the discussion is about what's considered natural, intimidating, or what's unnatural and what's not. And it's usually a typical double standard. They're not arguing against each other. They're arguing indirectly for different things, right? On the one hand, people are arguing about the habit formation. Like, oh, our focus is habit formation, which is a personal bias of mine, which I disclaim all the time. I focus on habit formation. While the other person focuses on quote unquote immersion is the word, I suppose. And what this means is this person's immersion is at the top level and they are very specialized, so they constantly criticize every product that's at a lower level, right? And what I mean by lower level is kind of like comparing a native language, quote unquote, high level language to a low level language. And no, I'm not talking about difficulty here. I'm talking about high level in forms of its nativeness. So kind of like programming. You have high level, which is very close to the emergence of your own language. So say like programming, a high level programming language would be something very close and intuitive to English, or like your spoken language, right? Your native language. And then when it becomes low level, it becomes very arts, right? There's a lot of quote unquote dumbing down of internal logic, so to speak. I'm using this analogy because I don't necessarily want to use different languages, natural languages, largely because that comparison is incredibly culturally spurious. So instead, we'll talk about two constructed languages, right? Like scripting constructed languages. And one that's high has a higher emergence. There's more nuance, inferred logic in it. What's lower is, quote unquote, the difference is it's not being simplified. It's being compartmentalized, right? It's a lot more explicit. So here we are again with this discussion, which I'll talk about in the future, where you're using either a bottom-up approach, right? Bottom up versus top down. Don't worry, this is related to WaniKani. So bottom up implies that it has to go up to reach native. Top down refers to that it starts at native or trying to represent native, right? Hence the high level language and low level language. So oftentimes there's this double standard. If someone who's quote unquote an expert in linguistics and they claim that they have a focus on language learning, and yet they criticize a bottom-up approach for the nature that it is not a top-down approach, that's asinine and narrow-minded. That's gaslighting as well. If you keep using emotional fear-mongering, like, oh, not only is a bottom-up approach going to get in the way of your language progress, it might even hurt your progress. For example, that's how this person speaks. Now, how does this relate to WaniKani? Well, WaniKani is a bottom-up approach. It's kind of like WaniKani is the idea of using this type of build is, I'm going to say more conservatively, it's more like a 70%, 30% situation. 30% of the methods have some top-down uses, and then 70% is bottom-up uses. So like creating radicals and then having the radicals build up to a kanji and kanji into a vocabulary word, and then maybe an increased interest in the context sentences that they provide, right? That's a bottom-up approach. That inherentness of taking parts and building up, right? That creates a different form of learning. Alternatively, you can take the native approach when you go top down. So you take the whole sentence and then you try to deconstruct it down to the parts using the nuances of your native language, right? So your native language is already at the top and you use that. And there is 30% of that in WaniKani. Where's that 30%? The mnemonics you construct is using the language that you have at a high level, right? Like just a bit ago, I used this. How do I know what this is? You know, kome, right? Kome. I use come, as in the English word come, to get rice. That is at a higher level. It's at the native level in my English, but it's combined to create a bottom-up approach for the construction of the new language, the target language. So it's both at the same time. But when I see someone criticize a technique or a learning technique, and they claim that they are an expert in a field that involves two different things, and their comment is nearly antagonistic to language learning and completely fully embracing that they're linguistics, which obviously I'm not a linguistic expert, but what they give me the impression that they say, as a linguistics expert or as someone who is expert in linguistics with a focus on language learning, it sounds more like someone who has a lot of experience and bias towards linguistics, and they make social commentary on language learning. Because what I just described here, being able to distinguish between a bottom-up approach and a top-down approach, that involves the learning process. I understand that it might not involve, perhaps someone may make an argument, which this person did, that language learning is very different. Language learning prevails predominantly on top-down approaches. So you must immerse, pick up a reference thing, and it's that simple, right? The irony here is the person was criticizing the product for making it sound simple, and yet they go about blabbling that it's just that simple too. Go pick up a children's book or a video game and grab a dictionary, and it's just that simple. What happened to me when someone says that is they are an expert in something, maybe linguistics, but they are certainly not an expert in language learning. Even if they focus on it, the advice, usually when you're very reductive about something, you have less knowledge about it. And you also appreciably sound condescending, maybe unintentionally so, condescending towards someone who has a different focus. So the stuff that this person said would be completely applied to WaniKani. So this is where WaniKani comes in. Most of the comments this person applied to would be WaniKani. It would be a criticism of WaniKani. Not only did this person is unable to see or acknowledge or even explain what the product that they're criticizing could and can do that's outside the scope of their priorities, they instead double down on pushing forth what they know is true, which is accurate, right? You could say all the things about linguistics. WaniKani does not provide sentence construction. It does not tell stories, right? It does not provide visuals, like literal visuals, as opposed to like, and then it does not provide situational conversation, right? You can say that it's true. Now the question is, where it lacks, what else does it do? So oftentimes it's disappointing. I'm gonna say it's disappointing, and it goes back now to my first comment why this is the case. When someone claims to be an expert, and they claim to be an expert in field or fields, right? And they have an intellectual pursuit, it's disappointing, but it's not unfounded that this person didn't develop an awareness necessarily, an awareness of their basic human conditions, of being unable to empathize or even welcome contrasting approaches, right? What you might think is just so easy, using a native top-down approach, may not necessarily be exclusive. It could be mutually inclusive of a different approach that deals with the bottom up. People, when it comes to human thinking, right, like the way learning happens, it happens at an emergent level. So you enter at a level in which you can go up and down. You can simplify something, or you can you can build up something. So if you enter at a comfortable level, for example, like where would be a comfortable level for kanji? For example, is it radicals? Radicals is kind of lower than that, right? What is above kanji? We're just gonna call it mnemonics, but it's more like native mnemonics, not target mnemonics. So a target mnemonics is what I would call a mnemonics constructed in the target language. Native mnemonics would be a mnemonic that's constructed in your native language, right? The one that's being aided. So that would be at a higher tier than the radical system going down, right? So technically you could hop right into kanji and start working downwards with like radicals, which may be facilitated by WaniKani and Anki, for example. And then you can go up, which can be facilitated by stories like graded readers, right? Graded readers, or even like mind palace situations, right? And you can see that there's far more resolution than this for the nuances, and this would be a topic that I feel involves in the learning process, learning and retention being reductively memory involved, right? And that still doesn't deal with output. Output is, in my opinion, technically somewhat outside of learning. Output has application, which I do incorporate into the whole studying thing, because application provides critical thinking skills and whatnot. But when it comes to a linguist, or someone who's incredibly seasoned and specialized, as in someone who's experienced, like maybe like an intermediate learner, this would be the stage that's happening. They would be more concerned with the interplay between input and output and its application. And its application is usually off to implicit learning with native content, right? And this foundational stuff for like radicals and stuff is overlooked over time. Like what I mean is, the longer you stay in this, which is what happens when you become fluent and native, in my opinion, less so and less so you'll become be able to relate or empathize with the value of taking a bottom up approach, right? And that's perfectly fine. I mean, that's like kind of a biologist talking to a physicist, right? It's interesting that I find this relationship being reflected in a linguist versus a language learner. And this is the dialogue that occurs a lot. But there's no, like, it's not versus. When since I'm a generalist, right? I'm someone who's casually outside of this a lot of times. I don't really find I tell myself I'm more of a language learner than a linguist because I have no linguistic interest at the moment. But as a generalist, I see both. Like, why not both? You can learn, grammar, pattern recognition, native pattern recognition. And then language learners have a lot of components, right? Like this. So there's also reductive components, like compartmentalization, right? Building. And these things usually do with abstractions. And abstractions are often potentially not native, right? Like this is an abstraction. It's kind of interesting to see how someone who claims to be a linguist often explains a lot of their methods, like explains solutions that incorporates abstraction, right? And that abstraction leads to that kind of defeats it leads to a cyclic argument. So like a linguist would say something like, well, like wagotabi, or like WaniKani dumbs things down, right? Dumbs things down because they choose to ignore stories and context. Well, by design, it doesn't have stories or context. So is that a criticism? Or is that a bias? I mean, they can add stories and context if they wanted, but I don't think that was an intended design. So linguists may argue, well, it dumbs things down because stories and sentences are more complex than studying radicals, right? But for a learning process, they didn't criticize the learning process. They criticized the content, right? There are no sentences or paragraphs in WaniKani, therefore it's trash, right? A linguist would say, the reason why I'm using the linguists as an example is because I can kind of see it from a biology standpoint. Now let's think about this analogy. As a biologist, right? I'm no longer a biologist, but let's just pretend I am still working in biology for a little moment, theoretically. If a language learner, right, or let's say a physicist, tells me, oh, this subatomic particle makes up everything of a phenomenon, right, that I'm investigating in right, in biology. But the thing is, at the emergent level of this is the native event, as in this is what's happening naturally. So a biologist is interested in observing the phenomenon at the level that it is witnessed. And what it does, it takes the phenomenon and try to reduce it only enough to get a greater understanding. Right? Meanwhile, a physicist might take this and try to lead to the phenomenon, as in build up to it. So a linguist oftentimes look at the summation of what they're observing, right? That's kind of, at least that's my impression of their expertise. What they do is they observe the language as a whole and try to through those observations, try to construct a universal or some sort of higher understanding of it, like its patterns, its grammar structure, I don't know, its consonant arrangements and stuff. That's I appreciate that. I really do, because that's what I spent most of my life doing when I'm not in language but in science. Now, that doesn't entitle me or give me the privilege to criticize how physicists approach their lower level, not lesser level, lower level as in a higher resolution, high resolution or lower level of stuff, right? Like a macro system is composed of many microsystems, but that doesn't mean the understanding the microsystem or at the level of the microsystem is lesser and may not produce understanding that otherwise something else, another method is quote unquote superior. So when it comes to linguists, oftentimes, yeah, I believe them. I think when that person said, as a linguist who focuses on language learning, it's more like as a linguist whose hobby is to try to understand language learning. It's pretty clear that the person does not have a lot of experience in language learning. They are far and foremost a linguist, right? Because when you criticize things like this, right, WaniKani's approach, for example, and all your comments deal with what it doesn't have in content. It doesn't focus on the learning aspect. It focuses on what the conditions are per se. Now the conditions are involved in it. I'm not saying they're exclusive, right? However, I have to emphasize, for someone who is claiming to be a linguistics expert or someone who works in linguistics and they have a consideration for language learning, when you present your case, it often shouldn't be, now this is my expectations, right? It often shouldn't be one-sided, right? That is my expectations intellectually. And I don't want to be blunt about this, but if you happen to be an expert and you're in a field of intellectual pursuit, I do honestly feel that it's kind of disappointing when a person's criticism and comments are one-sided. Right? I think oftentimes, or I like to believe oftentimes, when someone is an expert in an intellectual pursuit, they often speak in a way that it's at least more than one-sided, right? It has greater than two sides to the thing. So color me a little bit pessimistic or cynical about this, but typically when someone has to claim that they're an expert or have a focus on something, and then the next couple of things is a diatribe like that's like 10 paragraphs long about how one-sided the thing is and how simple it is, it leads me to believe that that person is not an expert nor an intellectual. They simply wanted to use their biased, single-minded approach as a way to spread the gospel of how narrow-minded they are. I think experts in the intellectual field tend to not sound like that. Like, truly, intellectuals do not make it sound so simple. Oftentimes, they actually complicate things. It's one of the natures of being an intellectual. What did you miss? I don't know. What did you miss? How long were you here? I am unaware of who you are. This is your first time message, so I guess you missed everything. by logic. All right, so let's conclude our mnemonics and stuff. I'll probably talk about this more during Wagotabi, like later after our Hanzi Hero lesson. But boy howdy, it's kind of disappointing. I might be disappointing myself thinking that this is the case, maybe. I don't think it's the social norm, though. I like to believe it's not the social norm. When someone is in a field of intellectual pursuit, I think it's more normal. Shouldn't experts correct incorrect information? But it's not incorrect information. There was no misinformation in it. It was a difference in methodology. Experts don't correct, it would be misinformation to correct information that isn't incorrect. So, it's not one-sided. Experts don't always correct information if they don't understand it. And this is one of the situations. So if you're a linguistics expert, or you claim you're a linguistics expert, and you rarely talk about learning process, you can think is incorrect. And that is still misinformation. So that's where the disappointment comes from. An expert does not jump to that. Like, an expert would tread carefully. How do we know it's not incorrect? You discuss, right? You form a consensus. You form a consensus with your peers. How do you know it's not correct? You don't. You don't know if it's correct or not. What you can do is you can form consensus by peers, right? A peer review process. That is, quote unquote, as accurate as you can be. Asking whether it's correct or not is exactly what not an expert would ask, in my opinion, in what they're talking about. And that's not good or bad. Some people, like, you don't have to worry about what's correct or not. You can worry about what's the consensus, right? And in this situation, someone who claims to be an expert or claims to be very well versed is going against a vast majority of people who are also experienced. The other direction is not happening. So the other group is not chastising this person for overreaching. So this is a double standard. This person believes that the majority of other people are incorrect, right? Instead of finding consensus and understanding how possibly two things can be true, this person chooses to leverage their expertise by negating a majority. That's like kind of, I don't know, that's kind of like Galileo being rejected because the majority, right, the dogma rejects him for having differences, while Galileo might have been taking whatever the majority was interpreting and incorporating it into his ideas. But we may never know because life kind of got ended quickly, right, or prematurely. so to speak. That's the difference here. It's a double standard. So if you're asking deterministic things, that to me is what is the antithesis of being an intellectual. So yes, you can live life without having to do this. You don't have to. You can live life deterministically, right? You can create a craft. That's deterministic. When you're talking about intellectual pursuits of things that do not necessarily have complete information, incomplete information, asking about whether it's correct or not is and it's not, this is not deterministic. What you can do is peer review. Peer review involves the exchange of information between A and B, not A criticizing B and refusing to understand, refusing to take in B, and then vice versa, B refusing to take A. That would be considered as what's correct or not correct. So if you think you're correct, you don't have any reason to intellectually be interested in why A exists. That to me leads to more likely to lead to misinformation, especially on the internet. And this person did a low-hanging fruit situation, low-hanging fruit argument, by throwing in Duolingo as a crutch for his explainer, right? You throw in Duolingo and it's like, you know, Duolingo, guys, right? Self-explanatory, Duolingo. If you throw in Duolingo, what it causes is that it becomes association with Duolingo, so then it's clearly not correct. If you draw parallelisms with Duolingo, that's the way of demonstrating that you are correct. How do you know if it's not deterministic? You talk as though it's not deterministic, or the degree of it, right? So, like for example, just study, forehead. Just studying. Just do this. Well, what's this? What does it mean by just? Is it really that simple? How do you know if a topic is deterministic or incomplete? Well, you don't. Well, you're asking someone who's don't think of it that way, so I can't answer that question, or I won't be able to answer it in a way. But you can say something like, tomorrow most people have slept. That's kind of deterministic, right? I don't think a topic is deterministic or incomplete. Like, what I mean is, I think honestly, I'm gonna be right with you. You're asking questions, but you're just turning the, and just adding. I'm not sure if you're getting it. What do you think? How about this? How do you know if a topic is deterministic or incomplete? How do you decide if an expert? Because your questions are one or the other, and yes or no, and then you add how to it. So my question to you is, instead of me answering this, right, because I don't have the answers, how do you know if a topic is deterministic or incomplete? It sounds like you're saying that when a topic is incomplete, then peer review is the gold standard. I might be suggesting that, right? But how do you suggest? I don't think it's related to the topic. Like, not any topic is incomplete I almost even say that most topics of intellectual pursuits, the topics under research, for example, right? Any topic that's under research is incomplete. But I like to think that one of the human conditions are that the world we observe, including human behavior, is typically incomplete. And that elicits the pursuit of knowledge. So we're having this discussion right now about determinism and incomplete is because for me, it's hard to determine. Like, I don't know who you are right now. You're a stranger. I can't determine very much anything about you. So now the question is, how do you know I'm saying that, right? I'm saying, like, how did you know that what I'm saying is that topics are incomplete and peer review is the gold standard? I attempted to express it. And now I get to ask you, what do you think? What do you think is one of the gold standards when a topic is incomplete? Or how you determine a topic is deterministic or incomplete? Because to me, that is defining peer review. I need to hear your end now and why you asked the question. Right? When it comes to the conversation I was observing online, that wasn't it. Person A was saying what was right. Person B was defending. Right? So the right thing that the person stated is deterministic. It wasn't open-ended. They say something will happen, should happen, and must be done. The defendant was suggesting this is an alternative. I agree that there are incomplete topics in which there are no definitive answers. I find that most intellectual pursuits do not. Current intellectual pursuits do not. However, when they do become, when they do become deterministic, right? When they become elucidated to a point, they no longer become intellectual pursuits, right? Oftentimes they become application. So then there will be no current intellectual pursuit of them. There are also deterministic topics where there are definitive answers. That's interesting. Can you give me an example? You don't know what criteria to use to determine the topic one or the other? Right. If you don't, then how can you say there are? You said there are also deterministic topics where there are definitive answers. But if you don't know what the criteria to use to determine the topic one or the other, then how can you say there are also deterministic topics? I'm on the side of if I don't know enough information, I can't share the information and talk about its application. Whether that determines the future or not, it's through the discussion, right? So call it a bit of a bias, I suppose. Most of the time it's through the exchange of ideas that one can find degrees of determinism. So like, it's more of a Likert scale, right? Probability. So you could say 0 and 1, but usually it's somewhere in here somewhere. And through the exchange of ideas, if you're trying to do application, you're trying to get closer to deterministic elements. Right, and then this would be like doubt and concept. So through this exchange of ideas, you're either getting closer to this or going this way, right? There's migrations through the saying or constantly is what's the topic of my digression here. It's what is 0 or 1 most of the time. And it's rare that I would be able to answer that question because I don't. So when you say, how do I know if a topic is deterministic or incomplete? I don't. It's somewhere in between. There are elements that are potentially deterministic and there are elements that aren't of most topics. So inherently, it's an incomplete picture of things if you are having discussions about them. Things that are maybe 99.99% deterministic are things that you do not have discussions around. What shifts the probability one way or the other? Discussion. And we don't know the nature of that. So yes, I agree with you. There are deterministic topics where there are definitive answers. The criteria is how often do you discuss its deterministic properties. If there's a lot of argument with it, then this percentage goes down. Right? So choose in terms of where your threshold is. What are not deterministic? What are semi non-deterministic things? We need food. Right? Carbs is a source of energy. Biological energy, right? These are things that are often still discussed, but to a lesser extent. And therefore it's quote unquote more deterministic than it is I don't know, incomplete. And when you say what shifts to the other, I'm just gonna say relativity. So more information may shift both directions, right? You have that you learn new facts, which leads to more questions situation. But more facts could lead to more consistency. Or I guess precision. And that precision can be tested for accuracy. Or like predictability if sometimes accuracy is not that great. It's more like predictability, I suppose, that they're looking for. So, how is this related to language learning? I don't know if you're just stopping by to ask, to approach a conversation using the Socratic method. But I'm language learning right now, and to context some of the things in terms of deterministic situations, oftentimes there's this association where it is impossible or semi-improbable. That's the impression I get when one looks at components. in order to faithfully reconstruct its emergent level of understanding. So that does happen in science quite a lot. Like, for example, if your universe is this big and the actual universe is this big, if you stay your time in here, you can't possibly understand the scope in which it encompasses you, right? And that is being applied to language a lot of times, or language learning. If you're learning characters like this, you can't possibly understand sentences. And if you can understand sentences, it's very difficult to understand paragraphs. And then paragraphs lead to, maybe like, we'll jump really high, lead to stories, right? And stories lead to, I don't know, culture. So at any of these levels, there are knowledge to be gained. But the question that a lot of people are asking when it comes to intellectual pursuits is that, where do you start? And a lot of times, linguists have a habit of starting at the top and then going down. Most of the time is constantly to go up, right? I know the arrows is pointing up and down, but that was my criticism of the conversation. A is at level X and B is at level Y, and they're strictly talking at these levels with each other or against each other. They're antagonistic to each other, but they're not arguing directly at each other. So it wasn't the difference between deterministic or incomplete. Is there's information to be had for both, but neither are considering the level of what they're talking about. There is not necessarily 100%. I would say like 70% of the time, they're not talking at the same level. 30% of the time, there's some overlapping things. And 30% of the time, they would concede to each other. So like, oh yeah, you know, repetition is important, for example. Yeah, we get it. Repetition is important for retention, right? So that is something that's in common with X plus Y. X plus Y can accommodate repetition. So now we know things that are similar between their perspectives. But 70% of the time, they're talking about what is absent in each one. So B suggests something that's absent in A, and A suggests something that's absent in B. So due to that nature of logic, they aren't talking in comparison. They're talking in like destructive nature. If A doesn't have this, then B can't possibly understand it, right? If B doesn't have this, then A can't possibly understand it. That's the way they're talking to each other. So there is an exchange, sort of, an exchange of information. But neither party is incorrect. Both are fine. They are saying facts about their observable level. So like, you can say here in WaniKani that mind palacing, for example, is useful. Right? At this level. If just so coincidentally, you know, at level A, this level, At level B, this is not to depict value system. It's just a separate value variable, right? Level B, if Mind Palace doesn't work, like Mind Palace sucks, right? If Mind Palace sucks in level B, does that mean that this is invaluable? Like, this is a waste of time? That is the type of argument that two experts or two experienced groups may have in discussion. That is, in my opinion, not peer review. That's not the same as peer review. Peer review is typically in operating in testing both situations that are both applicable to a situation. The argument that's having here is deterministically suggesting that one is not applicable. And I don't know if it's true because I'm not an expert in either of these. I'm not an expert in mnemonics or language learning or linguistics, so I can't actually make a comment on whether the argument is deterministic or not. I can make a comment on who is more sounding deterministic. So like the person at level A, through their language, was arguing that B is incorrect. B was not doing anything back. B was defending their position, right? And that's where it's disappointing. I think there's a lot to be learned if they communicated with each other through the act of attempting to do peer review, or even null hypothesis testing, really. Right. And this is an active area of discussion, talking about language learning versus linguistics and stuff. And I'm very much into it. And it's not disappointing. The information is not disappointing. I thought it was really fascinating. Like, oh, okay, so that's something I want to consider. And then that's something I want to consider. Did the expert provide any experimental evidence? That's a interesting thought. It's a blip. They were providing a review. So they cited like grammar errors that they found. That's in the game, right? We're talking about Wakotabi here. They found grammar errors. Like they cited one grammar error. So is that sufficient? Most of the time, I would say from a statistical standpoint, citing one grammar error in a game that has over 50 grammar topics would be kind of an outlier, if you know what I mean. But others would be they name drop, right? They name drop. So maybe refer to other experts, right? They refer to other experts. Which, of course, that brings in even more nebulous situation. That's assuming the other person they're talking to also am aware of the experts. The claim is an ad hominem argument. So most of their evidence is built into an ad hominem argument. Which is, oh, I don't think these guys took a deep dive in understanding how language learning works because they didn't tackle all the evidence that existed. So it's really nebulous, right? And in order to make this sound a little bit more contextually appropriate, is that this is a review on a Steam page. So perhaps it's not the most appropriate place. And they excuse themselves, from going into a long digression on the specifics. It's more of a trust me bro situation. And I can kind of see how it's appropriate. I mean, I'm not here to belabor talking about points that I don't have any expertise in. I think my major criticism is that it's pretty telling behaviorally when someone overreaches. Like, for example, I could have easily answered your question by saying, how do you know if a topic is deterministic or incomplete? I could say, well, go read X person's book and you'll know. Or Google examples. These are deterministic outcomes. So you're inferring that when you do this, you will get your answer. It does not tell me what the experience and expertise of the person I'm speaking to whom I'm speaking to. Right? And they excuse themselves by saying, well, it's not appropriate here, which is very fair. I think that's incredibly fair. Now, will they continue to have a dialogue with the developer? I'm not entirely sure because it seems like they made up their minds. For myself, I wouldn't go and do this because my professional integrity would be questionable. What I can tell you is I can give you examples from my own personal anecdotes related to like WaniKani, right? For example, can you take a radical and construct a kanji out of it? For myself, it's yes. And I would love to see and hear from people who say, no, it's not. That would be something that, in my opinion, would have an intellectual component to it. So I don't tell you that this works. Or this always works. I tell you what it does. What does WaniKani do? As in, like, what is in WaniKani, and then welcome your informed decision or your informed information, right? Now, it would be very different. Hear me out. I would give much more leeway if that person didn't say, if they didn't stake their professional integrity on it. But online, this is gonna be a start. This will be a integrity. Sorry, I can't spell integrity. So this might be a little bit of a brush off and leeway that I would say. If someone is not staking their professional integrity, they could have said anything that was an op-ed, an opinion piece. They could write, oh, they just didn't like the way the game looked, or they didn't like the material they included. They disagree with the tier. That's perfectly fine. My bias here is that when someone states their professional status, it means something to me. Right? It means something. It has value. However, here's the generalization online. Again, pardon my hot take. This is a rather hot thing. I think people nowadays have normalized trivially, which then becomes trivial, to state expertise by hearsay and failing to demonstrate it. It's kind of like one of those moments. Tell me you are not a teacher by not telling me. Or, yeah, by not telling me, or whatever that meme is. So it's kind of like someone who says, hey, I'm a polyglot, and then They demonstrated by saying hello in 30 different languages. That's telling me you aren't a polyglot by not telling me you're a polyglot. Right? So, in that case, yes to some people might be a polyglot, and no to other people, and they might not be a polyglot. But they were certain, they were absolutely determined, deterministic, spoken in a deterministic manner to indicate that they are a professional. And to me, when you stake your professional integrity on an intellectual field of pursuit, it doesn't come very easily, at least in my opinion, or I like to believe. So I rarely ever go out of my way to say, hey guys, as a language learner for over a year and a half, I'm entitled to tell you what you should and should not do, and the correct and incorrect ways of learning a language. I wouldn't stake my professional integrity on that, at least personally, right? I'm projecting now, so this is me projecting my own opinions of what a professional is or an expert is. Unsolicited advice would be a very touchy subject, but for myself, I would provide evidence of what I did and then allow the other person to interpret that evidence in order to help me grow as a professional. Or if that person is curious, they would ask me to elaborate on the evidence. So my evidence is that I played this game this person was talking about, and I have come to a contrasting opinion on that person's statements. However, that person does not have evidence that they were able to demonstrate the problem. Now, it can be really tough because proving something is far harder, usually, than disproving something. My background is in, well, my former background, professional background, is in science, right? Is in science. And I can tell you now, when I was writing my thesis, 7 years, and I got maybe a 10% answer. And then, 90% of it is like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Yeah. You'll be back, God willing. Oh, that's interesting. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing when it comes to the phrase God willing. But yeah, you're welcome. I would love to hear if you engaged in any of these conversations before. Like, have an argument with someone like, oh, this movie is good. I think that's a great place to talk about. Like, since when was the last time you disagreed with someone about how something was objectively a good thing? I think that's where we're going with this. Usually in those situations, people don't stake their professional integrity on it. In my generation, the people that I hang around with, I think it happens far more online though. Which leads to the whole meme of the internet expert. Like, oh, hey, I read 30 hours of this book content, so therefore, as a seasoned expert in so and so, and then they would blurt out a bunch of citations and references that are not their own evidence, and that's disappointing. That person probably knows a lot of things, but maybe less so experience a lot of things. All right, let's finish this and we'll move on to our next lesson. Mohawk, simultaneous, next, spear, number, half, and blade. Our reads. Okay. Ana, Mora. What were you? You came pretty quickly, right? Teki. and sai I yo. That's pretty good now. An se mu sa ki so. That's it. That's kind of delayed. That's it. Shi and a oka so. Okay, so is kind of okay right now. Probably gonna stay pretty weak. Dan I nin en jo seki se sho zo ze ken zai nin I sen. All right. Yep, that's a wrap for WaniKani today. I wanted to fill in a little bit of thoughts for the day. I thought it would have been kind of fun. Had some interesting questions that I can possibly answer, right? Could kind of qualify it. Experts correct incorrect information. How do we know it's not correct? Got a lot of them. All right. So that's a wrap for WaniKani today. If you're gonna watch this later, arigatou gozaimasu. Right. Until then, stay safe. Feel free to follow along. Pick up WaniKani. Give it a try yourself. Determine what your thoughts are through experience, right? Or resonate with someone, sure. Pick up their impressions vicariously. You're more than welcome. Everyone's more than welcome to stop on by, share your opinions, concepts, regardless of what they are. I would love to hear people's opinions on these things or facts, I suppose. Exchange ideas, share anecdotes, brainstorm, and plan new experiences together. That'd be pretty great. Always welcome. Until then, for those who are only interested in WaniKani in Japanese, right? Minasan mata ne, right? Mite kurete arigato, right? See you guys next time. Thanks for watching. I'm gonna get up, go to the bathroom, flip around a little bit, run a few laps around the house, and I'll be back for Hanzi here. Thank you.